Looks like it happened. Though I'm not sure what the version of the deal that got signed was. Ukraine and U.S. sign economic and reconstruction deal. The deal is intended to give the United States access to proceeds from Ukraine's reserves of rare earth minerals. Basically, the gist of it is that for some reason, God made Ukraine, the universe's least stable chunk of land, a beautiful breadbasket of everything good in the world. Oil, arable land, rare earth minerals, whatever, man. For some reason, just that's where all the stuff's piled in. I don't know why. It's probably because of dinosaurs or something. Good game devs. It was good map placement from God to incentivize high conflict areas. You don't want to put the capture points at the back of the map. It's the PvP zone. The United States and Ukraine announced on Wednesday the creation of a new reconstruction and investment fund, formalizing an economic agreement between the two countries that is intended to give the U.S. access to proceeds from Ukraine's reserves of rare earth minerals. So this is really significant for a few reasons. For one, Trump wanted an extortionary amount of money from Ukraine. What we're doing here, by the way, is not uncommon historically. It's just not as common today. It used to be that, like, empires would extend out like mercantile companies into other colonized nations, and the company would go like, all right, well, we have secured from your colonial masters rights to the spices or the minerals or whatever else in this region. We're going to do the work, you're going to do the labor, we're going to take the money. That's essentially what we're doing right now with Ukraine. The involvement of American companies, however, implies a continuation of an older practice in that old mercantile form, which is to say, the East Indian Company had guns. No one was sailing down to, gather spices without an army to back them up in those days. And that kind of implies we'd be doing the same here. Like, at the moment, what private company would choose to extract resources from East Ukraine? What, are you just going to, climb over the trenches, dodge the landmines, shuffle past all the Ukrainian soldiers, then the Russian soldiers, then find the mining spot, and then set up? What are you talking about? If we're willing to front investment in this region, that implies that we would be able to provide enough security that private companies would feel it worth investing in the area. Does that mean our soldiers? Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, Ukraine's soldiers have not had the easiest time retaking that land. The agreement concludes months of fraught negotiations over whether the U.S. will continue to provide Ukraine with economic and military support for Ukraine as it tries to broker an end to its war with Russia. The economic agreement is intended to provide Ukraine with an implicit security arrangement while addressing Trump's concerns that the U.S. has provided Kiev with a blank check. We're doing like genuine 18th, I guess 19th century mercantile colonialism right here. This is just straight up, we will continue to supply you with weapons, and we will, in return, extract wealth from your country through our private companies. But what private companies would be willing to do work in this area? Just one missile strike from Russia could cost tens of millions of dollars, not to mention the people that it would kill. This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term, said Scott Bessent in a statement. President Trump envisioned this partnership between the American people and the Ukrainian people to show both sides' commitment to lasting peace and prosperity. And to be clear, no state or person who financed or supplied the Russian war machine will be allowed to benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine. I can't believe it. I think there's a very real possibility that Putin spurning Trump got Trump angry enough at Putin that he was willing to publicly back an actual security agreement for Ukraine. Because Ukraine would not agree to this unless there were some meaningful security provisions. Ukraine doesn't even have an incentive to. Because Ukraine's been getting, and has been getting promises for, more weaponry from Europe. Ukraine wouldn't just accept this unless they got something from it. But these security agreements imply that we would be willing not only to give Ukraine weapons, but provide security or ensure security in regions that we're extracting wealth from. Does anyone else, do you guys agree with me that this is like actually potentially kind of huge and also concerning? Like, I'm pro-Ukraine, but if the implication here is we would be providing security, that could be World War III, so I don't think that's going to happen. But I also don't know what we could be offering Ukraine that would allow them to provide meaningful security. How do you securely extract resources from a war zone? You can fire missiles hundreds of miles now. It's not like if you keep the fighting back 50 miles, you're fine. We're not just talking about artillery fire. You can strike anywhere in the world, basically from anywhere in the world. Like it used to be you could do economic extraction in a war zone because as long as the fighting was somewhere else, you were fine. It's not like that anymore. Why wouldn't Russia just fire missiles at any refineries, mines, anything like that that we built? They could do it effortlessly. It's not like any of those locations are secret. It would be known because there would be private investment in the region. It'd be easy to see on satellites. And what's more, it can't move. They would be stationary because we'd fired back. Who's we? American soldiers? And if by we you mean Ukraine, they're already firing back. I don't know, maybe the US gives Ukraine tons of advanced military hardware. It's okay, I'm thinking possibilities here. I'm thinking what it could mean. Possibility number one, American military escorts for economic extraction. Not likely. That's crazy. That's insane. Number two, post-war extraction. That is to say, the economic extraction will only take place after the war ends. Questions here. When the hell will the war end? What provisions would have to be made in the meantime to ensure that these areas wouldn't be under Russian control when the war ends? Does that mean we would just continue to provide Ukraine weapons as usual? Did the MIC broker this contract because they wanted to have some kind of on-paper pretext for continuing to supply Ukraine, and they get to double dip because afterwards they get proceeds from the security arrangements that need to be provided in order to facilitate the extraction of those resources? But a follow-up question to that, do these people think the war is ever going to end to the point where you can extract resources from the area? Even if the war officially ends, it's Russia, right? We're talking like a massive demilitarized zone. People are still going to get hurt on both sides of the border all the time unless Russia is decisively beaten, which seems like at this point not very likely. Additionally, are we sending mercenaries in? Are we talking like Blackwater shit? Like are we, because there is one way we could meaningfully push back on Russia, and that would be like real mercenary involvement with modern American weapons. That could do a lot, especially if they were doing like covert operations behind the scenes, you know? Honestly, Russian logistics are so bad that a group of highly trained American like veteran mercenaries could probably be airdropped in the Donbass and just start killing. Like, I've heard, I don't know how much of it is conjecture, but my understanding is that the average Russian on the front lines right now is like a 19-year-old, just like not desperado, sorry, like a desperate 19-year-old conscript, or like somebody who's only there to make a little bit of money because they couldn't otherwise like afford shit. Despacito, exactly. 60-year-old? My understanding is that the average soldier that Russia is sending to the front lines right now is not especially competent. And I don't think their military leaders are either. We saw what happened at the beginning of the war. So genuinely, if they just dropped a bunch of mercenaries on the back end and they started like running around, like killing persons of interest, you know, Russian officers, they could probably do that. PMCs have been champing at the bit to do things. Yeah, that's true. And for the most part, we haven't really been letting them do that because a private military corporation, mercenaries, can't really do that much without the American military industrial complex's backing, because that's where they get their resources. And also it's difficult and blah, 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 blah. BlackRock founder Eric Prince had floated the idea. I think you mean Blackwater. Blackwater founder Eric Prince had plans to create a $10 billion private army in Ukraine. Yeah, they love this shit because it's literally a PvP zone for them. Like it's free real estate. So it seems to me like the possibilities here are the security agreement might be deferred with weapon payments in the meantime. But if that's the case, that opens up a bunch of other questions. It could mean American military involvement, which would be insane. It could mean mercenary involvement, which is less insane, but also really wacky. If we started authorizing and supplying Western mercenary companies in East Ukraine, that would be good television. I'll cover my bases and I'll speak broadly. I think that would be good television. It would also be insane, but it would be less insane than if our soldiers were there. The only other thing that I can think of is that we start giving Ukraine access to like the real shit, you know? Remember how much work they got done with the HIMARS rockets? They only had them for like, they only had like a small stock of them for a few months. And with them, they were able to strike so many, the ATACMS, yeah. They were able to strike refineries and positions like logistics centers way hundreds of miles back. And we could do it. I mean, we've got plenty of weapons. I don't think we have that many of the rockets, but we could build more, or something comparable. God only knows what the fuck we have in our storage. Our back shed, you know? Gonna give them the goddamn neutron bombs or something. I don't know, dude. This is crazy. The MIC definitely wants us to continue supplying stuff in Ukraine. You know what the MIC definitely wants? They want in Ukraine what we did in Israel. Israel isn't just a place we send weapons to. Israel is a place we test weapons in. Their AI-based surveillance systems, their AI drone missile targeting strike systems, their automatic gun turrets that fire on people without human supervision, their weapons, it's a testing ground for us. Israel writes down what happens. Our companies take note. So I guarantee you that because Ukraine is a much larger scale conflict, they would love it if Ukrainians got their hands on some modern, or at least somewhat modern stuff, because then they could get some interesting data. Yeah, Israel probably gives shitty data because when they write down what the bomb did, they're like writing down really racist epithets towards Palestinians rather than any actual data. It's like how we can't use Nazi military or medical data because the people writing it down were so racist and anti-Semitic that they forgot to write down like numbers and do control studies and stuff, you know? People are like, well, at least we learned interesting stuff from the Holocaust medical experiments. We really didn't. They really did not. We really didn't learn anything from that. They were just crazy. Does anyone else have, like, I'm kind of like, the reason I'm stalling a bit on this is because I'm looking for any information from chat that might, I don't know, help me develop a thought on this. This just seems insane to me. I never expected Ukraine to go with this, especially because it seems like there's no way we could provide security agreements that would make any difference without massive commitment of arms or soldiers. I don't know. Surely reconstruction just means after the war, right? Yeah, but we're giving Ukraine weapons in the meantime, which means we're expecting a payout, which means we want that land, which means Russia can't have it, which means we want Ukraine to win. But we've been giving weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine hasn't won. So we got to do something. If we want that land so we can get trillions of dollars in extractive resources afterwards, we need to do something to secure that land, right? We need the land so we can colonize it. What can we do? Does this make Putin's position weaker? Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I don't see any way this benefits Putin at all. If anything, the fact that this is happening like right after a second conversation with Zelensky and Trump having a crash out about how Putin needs to stop now, I think, yeah, it can't possibly be good for Putin at all. The deal's not yet effective. Well, no, I mean, it just got signed. I'm just saying, like, the ramifications. Here, let me get a bit of video info. BBC, what do you have to say?
The US says it's ready to sign a much-anticipated resources deal with Ukraine. There's no clarity on when it will be signed, although the Ukrainian economy minister is on her way to Washington. The deal is said to provide for a 50-50 joint economic fund between Kyiv and Washington. President Trump was asked this question by journalists at his cabinet meeting.
That the Ukraine minerals deal is about to be signed in the next 24 hours or so. There's some reports saying that. And if it's true, has the deal changed at all from the last time we heard about it?
Well, I'll ask Scott to answer the question because he's responsible for it.
Yeah, our side is ready to sign. Ukrainians decided last night to make some last-minute changes. We're sure that they will reconsider that, and we are ready to sign this afternoon if they are.
Can you talk about those last-minute changes? What was removed or put in its place?
Nothing's been removed. It's the same agreement that we agreed to on the weekend. No changes on our.
Well, that was Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and President Trump went on to talk further about the deal and what he's looking for.
I didn't want to make a complicated deal. I didn't want to make a deal that couldn't be made because Ukraine doesn't have very much money. They're going through a very bad period of time. It's been brutal. But I felt very foolish being in charge. So I said, well, we want something for our efforts beyond what you would think would be acceptable. And we said rare earth. They have very good rare earth. As you know, we're looking for rare earth all the time. Rare earth is called rare for a reason. And
that's great.
They have a lot. And we made a deal where our money is secure, where we can start digging and doing what we have to do. It's also good for them because you'll have an American presence at the site, Chris. And the American presence will, I think, keep a lot of bad actors out of the country, or certainly out of the area where we're doing the digging. So we made a deal, and I assume they're going to honor the deal. And I put Scott in charge, and Scott's done it beautifully, but we haven't really seen the fruits of that deal yet. I suspect we will.
Well, speaking on Ukrainian national television earlier, Denis Shmyhal.
Fascinating. From the Minister of Ukraine's economy.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership.
You understand why this is weird, right? Like, this is clearly being fronted as an effort to stop the war, or at the very least, like, leverage American wealth and investment against Putin, but he's not talking about it in that way. Like, he's referring to it as a post-war recovery fund that we would both contribute to. But, like, what are we doing now to secure that? You understand what I mean? Like, they're talking as though the war isn't still actively going on.
U.S. and Ukraine have just reached a minerals deal. It will grant the U.S. privileged access to new investment projects to develop Ukraine's natural resources, including aluminum, graphite, oil, and natural gas.
Yeah, but, like, I don't know. It's odd. Okay, imagine, like, doing the Lend-Lease Act, but rather than saying, and you're going to use these goods to beat back Hitler, they were saying, like, and we're going to use these goods to build up your country, to show a joint commitment to peace. So Hitler, take note. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like you're like the obvious implication of the process here is that this is being done in a way to, like, you can't, if Russia owns the land, a deal is moot. So you're clearly banking on Russia not owning the land. And the more Russia doesn't own the land, the more land there is to pour money in from the fund. I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing a very good job explaining my confusion on this.
Negotiators from Ukraine are in the United States trying to iron out the details of a rare earth minerals agreement between the two countries. North American correspondent Cayman Gok joins us. Good morning to you. How close are they to actually getting this deal signed?
Good morning. Well, both sides are publicly saying that they're ready to sign this deal. In fact, Ukrainian officials say they want this arrangement signed in the next 24 hours. But the same could have been said for when Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, flew to the White House to sign this same deal, and things spectacularly fell apart and did not go as planned. Now, what this deal means is that the US could access Ukraine's natural resources, its critical minerals, and it's seen as a way way of strengthening economic ties between the two countries. President Donald Trump believes this is a way to gain access to more rare earth minerals, but also to pay back America for the military aid and support that it's provided in this war so far. At this stage, though, it does not appear that specific security guarantees will be included in this deal, and that is something that Volodymyr Zelensky has been really pushing for.
Well, then why would he do it at all? I guess maybe if America looks to invest in Ukraine, you kind of want them to be... Yeah, it's like protecting your investment, but how are you going to protect it? The deal would be funded through direct investment, future U.S. aid, and revenue from new mineral licensing deals, and does not set up any Ukrainian debt obligations. According to a Ukrainian fact sheet, the U.S. would contribute to the fund, quote, either through direct financial input or through new military assistance, and the agreement focuses on further, not past, military assistance. Under the deal, Ukraine would hold on to ownership of its natural resources. The fund can only be invested in resource and infrastructure projects within Ukraine. Profits on the fund would be reinvested in the Ukrainian economy for the first decade and can be, quote, distributed between the partners after that. A decade from now. Like we're all going to live a decade from now. So, the fund is going entirely to Ukraine. 10 years. I don't get why Ukraine is interested in this deal at all. No. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like this is MIC shit. I think there's a reason why Scott Bessent was the one presenting it, because he's one of the more level-headed cabinet members. This is MIC shit 100%. This is not a Trump deal. This is Trump got pushed into it after the Putin crash out. The construction of this fund materially incentivizes continued investment in Ukraine's security, especially because the fund gets paid into through future arms guarantees. Also, the first decade of fund profits goes back to Ukrainian investment. If anything, it seems like kind of a good deal for them. There aren't any specific security provisions, but this massively increases the incentive from America to contribute arms assistance. I wonder if the MIC just like, I don't know. I wonder if they just wanted to create like a good incentive for us to continue providing weapons. Maybe the reasoning here is Biden did a bad job with this because he was basically just giving Ukraine weapons for free. Like he wasn't, but that was the way it was framed publicly. Like Biden was providing support to Ukraine, but he was doing it in a way that came across as it being like charity, you know, like he was being doing it as an extension of goodwill. But this sets up an economic incentive because any future aid contributes to the fund, which, by the way, for the first decade only goes to Ukraine. Yeah, don't get it twisted. This is going to be used as a way of funneling more money into Lockheed Martin. Still, I'm happy about support for Ukraine. I do wonder how, in the long term, the like fake isolationist MAGA types who are anti-Ukraine because they're pro-Russia, but they pretend they're anti-Ukraine because they don't want America to be involved in foreign wars, are going to wrap around this one. The Nazis and fake isolationists in the MAGA camp already have to ignore the fact that every Republican would like get down on their hands and knees to kiss Netanyahu's feet. So now they're also going to have to, you know, now they're also going to have to find a way around this.